Hey team, welcome back to the Product Girl channel. If you're new here, I'm the Product Girl, and I love sharing everything product management. I'm so passionate about the industry, and in today's video, I'm going to discuss what I would have done differently if I could start over. Hopefully my experiences can offer you some valuable insights, whether you're currently in product management or you're aspiring to become a product manager. So this video is going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. I'm hoping it helps you. So let's get started. Reflecting on my career journey, if I had to start over, I would have immersed myself in the startup culture. This is because there is so much growth. It creates a solid foundation because you're really gaining those invaluable experiences to really accelerate and propel your career forward. I know, obviously, I've talked about in my previous videos that I didn't even really know I was doing product management. It wasn't something that I was aspiring to do. And I eventually realized that being in a startup environment was where I was really gonna get my experience. So being at the startup that I was at, it really helped accelerate my career forward. 1 year there literally lasted me to 5 years plus because you are working with so many different teams, you're wearing so many different hats, you know, you're understanding different type of approaches and frameworks and methodologies. Like for example, I didn't even really know what Kanban or Scrumban or any of those frameworks were. Design, engineering, the user experience, you know, you're wearing all these different hats and there's not much red tape that you would have probably experienced in a corporate environment. And not to compare, like obviously every environment is different, but I noticed in my experience coming from a corporate setting and then going back into a corporate setting, you have more of that chance to work with those cross-functional teams and get more of that learning experience. For example, you know, if you're an aspiring product manager and you get an entry-level role at a startup, you're doing a lot of different things at different levels, right? You could be doing responsibilities of 2 levels above you. So by the time you leave the startup, you've already accelerated your career and you can demand a higher salary if that's what you prefer, or a higher role because you just learn so much. So being in a startup environment, it really gives you the opportunity to be agile, to be adaptable, and to learn new things at different levels. So you can accelerate your career if you chose to leave that startup, because startups, they have that growth mindset and that resilience, which is gonna definitely expand your career to ridiculous heights, because this is what you need. Like, you need the resilience, you need that growth mindset to be like, hey, I'm gonna just keep pushing forward. And it really benefits you as you start getting more senior in your career, as you start moving forward. You know, even though I fell into product management, I did eventually end up in a startup environment, and I learned so much. I mean, 1 year there accelerated my career 5 years plus, because when you're in that startup environment, a lot of innovation and creativity happen, and you're wearing multiple hats. And you learn things like different agile methodologies like Scrum, Kanban, Scrumban. You have technical knowledge, you have engineering, you have design, you name it. Another thing is, don't rely on other people to teach you. You know, I kind of made this mistake going into the beginning. I thought that every manager that I had was always going to teach me something. And even though you can have leaders, mentors, managers, even colleagues try to show you things here and there, ultimately, your success and your growth and development will be up to you. And product management is one of those roles that is so nuanced. You can't ask somebody to teach you every little thing. And in addition to that, being a successful product manager, you're gonna constantly have to be thinking how you can learn about the next thing. It's one of those careers where you have to be a proactive learner if you wanna be successful at it. This means seeking out resources and constantly educating yourself and looking for new opportunities. In my previous video, I talked about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable and the unknowns. And this is where this is very important, because if you're relying on somebody to constantly teach you things, you're gonna be uncomfortable anyways. So you might as well just go out there and start learning yourself, and failing quickly is how I saw it. And in my experience, it was almost like I was afraid to learn because I didn't know if I was gonna learn the wrong things. But then gradually you start getting into forums, speaking to people, and seeing the resources that are out there, because that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to see all of your resources. You know, people in the industry that have been successful. You're gonna have to read books, and you know, if you're really passionate about the industry, this is gonna be something like I wouldn't say a second job, but it's almost like second nature to constantly want to learn. And product management is very similar in the aspect, I would say, of engineering. Because a lot of the engineers I worked with, they were like, I'm constantly learning a new code base. I'm constantly learning different infrastructures, what's going on in the tech space. And I remember thinking, wow, like product management is the same thing. So you're gonna constantly have to wanna learn. That proactive learner mentality is gonna make sure that you're very successful in the role. The best product managers are those who take the initiative to learn independently and constantly seek other knowledge and feedback from others rather than waiting for others to tell them something. You just can't hang your hat on someone trying to teach you. The best product managers take initiative for their own journey and the skills that they're gonna need to develop. And I can't stress that enough. If I would have sat there and pretty much committed my life to hoping that a hiring manager or a colleague or whoever it was going to teach me product management, I probably wouldn't be here today discussing with you on things that I would have done differently or even started this channel. So I highly recommend that don't hang your hat on someone trying to teach you. In the end of the day, being a proactive learner as a product manager will get you very far. One thing I would definitely change, probably above anything else, is finding a way to manage my stress levels and really promote a work-life balance and concentrate on my mental health. This is huge, especially in an industry where work-life balance is really, really hard to find. And I say this because I know earlier on in my career, and actually probably up until 2020, I didn't have that work-life balance, and I ended up getting very burnt out. So I'll share a piece of my own experience in my life. Back in 2020, I became very sick, very ill. Obviously, that was the 2020 COVID pandemic. You know, you can kind of default it to that, but this was a little bit deeper. I got extremely sick, esophagitis, gastritis. That was actually triggered by, some food choices, but mostly by stress. And I had to go in and have an endoscopy. And I remember after I got out, my gastroenterologist was like, how old are you? And I told him my age, and he goes, you are too young to have these issues. Whatever is stressing you out is not worth it. And it really put things into perspective for me. Because as a product manager, you don't manage any teams, but you lead them, and people look to you for guidance. And not just in a work setting or from a technical aspect, but also from, I would say, a work-life balance, encouraging your teams to take time off, which I always did. And I always put everyone else first, but I didn't take care of myself. And this was an eye-opener for me, because I look back on what led me to that point. And I was scrum mastering for 2 agile teams. I was also product managing. I was career coaching for product management. And I was doing all these things. And I look back, like I said, I would probably prioritize my mental health. This would include creating boundaries for the leadership team or anyone that I was working with, and find healthy ways to manage my stress. So after all that happened, I said, you know something, I really do need to change how I start my day, because how you start your day is going to determine the rest of it. So now I meditate every morning for 30 minutes, and I practice gratefulness during my meditation and throughout the day. I also write in my journal. which really helps get those thoughts out on paper, like anything that's really bothering you. And in addition, I have a things to do list, and I prioritize it before I start my day. And throughout the day, I also take walks, and I know that this has really helped me to clear my mind. And just doing those things alone, and also kind of a tip, I know I may get pushed back for this, but that's completely okay. I don't start my day with coffee anymore. I start my day with warm water, lime, and glutamine, because I noticed it would kind of bother my stomach a little bit starting with coffee and would raise my cortisol level. So I was more anxious and like, trying to get things done. So for me, starting my day off like that really helped to kind of like mitigate some of the stress that I had. So that's very important. Over anything else, your ways to manage stress, mental health is super important. Probably the number one thing on my list that I would have done differently. So if I could go back, I would tell my beginner self to celebrate those small wins and stay positive. Product management is very stressful. I'm not gonna lie about that, but it's also what you make of it. And looking back, I was like, I need to switch my mindset with being a product manager, because I already know the stress is gonna be there. Every job is stressful to a certain extent, but usually with some jobs, you can kind of compartmentalize, your job responsibilities and your roles. Product management really isn't like that. You're constantly working with cross-functional teams. And I noticed something, that I would celebrate my team success and my colleagues, even my leaders and my manager and my own team, but I never celebrated mine. And I was so hardcore in my opinion, hardcore to myself. But for others, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. They're like, oh no, it's not something huge. It's not something grand. But I'm like, for me, I was like, this is incredible. Like, I think you did such a great job, but I couldn't tell myself that. And I'm looking back and thinking what I do today. It may not be a huge win, but it's those little small wins that put you in those iterations to ultimately have those big wins. And staying positive. I'm usually a positive person in general, but sometimes it just gets so hard in certain situations, but just constantly tell yourself, be positive and be grateful. Because positivity and resilience can really help you to stay motivated and inspired, and not just you, but your teammates. Like I've mentioned, people seek to you for leadership. It doesn't matter if you're an individual contributor or you're an actual leader or manager. So, positivity is contagious. Resilience is contagious. So it's gonna really help to set the tone for your team and the organization in general. So remember to stay positive and celebrate those small wins, even when everything is crashing down, because how you react in those moments will determine a lot of your success in your role and in the future. So if something happens that you didn't plan, or you feel like just nothing's working out, you're gonna know how to handle it better, and people are gonna see that type of leadership in you. Another thing I would have done differently is I would have focused more on the business side and the external factors of the industry. So in my roles in the beginning, I was just so excited to start using the product and start innovating and just get to it. But there is so much more than just innovating the product and dealing with iterations. You have to think about the business as a whole and the market landscape that you're in. And you have to think about things like, currently, internally, the business goals. In general, the organization you're in has their own goals. You have to think about that as well. What is the vision? What is the mission? What are leaders expecting to see from you in 3, 6, 9, 12 months? And when I mean see from you, I'm referring to the product. Like, what do they need from that product to deliver on their goals? So thinking about all those things, and then not just internally, but externally. understanding the industry that you're in. Like I said, same thing on the business side, the industry you're in, the market landscape, but externally, what are your competitors doing? What are they offering your customers or your potential customers that you're not? How are you going to steal, for lack of a better term, market share so that their customers can become your customers? Where are you missing the mark? And then think about your vision. What's happening around the world? What are the market trends that you need to be thinking about? And there was just so many factors that I didn't even consider. I remember just getting into the role, okay, this is how the product works. Okay, great, this is what I want to do. Not thinking that there were the business side of it, and there were these external factors that played such a role in the development of the product and the success of the organization, the business, and the team. So another thing I would have done differently is I would have prioritized technical knowledge. So once I realized I was doing product management, I can't comfortably say I was really doing product management. I was in, a corporate setting. I would say I was probably doing 30%, 40% of product management. And I say that because yes, I was leading a CRM platform for customers, but I wasn't really going out and, talking to them. I wasn't doing any market landscape analysis. I wasn't doing any testing. I didn't know anything from a technical perspective. I didn't know how that product was built and its capabilities or its constraints. And I remember when I finally got into my first technical role, my manager at the time was like, you need to be technical. And I did not fight him on this because I knew that he was right. Because you don't need to know how to code. If you want to learn how to code, all the power to you. It's super beneficial. But you need to understand how the product is built and the infrastructure. And I say this so much in my other videos because you need this in order for the product to be successful, because you could put something on your roadmap that is like, okay, this cannot be done. In any sense of the word, this can't be done. But if you're presenting this to your leadership team and you go back to the engineers, they're like, this is not possible. Like, this is not gonna happen. So being technical really helps with communicating to your engineering teams, to your leadership teams, even your customers and potential customers. And looking back in the beginning, which I eventually did do this, but in the beginning, I would have taken more like software engineering courses, more certifications, and really just dived in a little bit more deeply, if you will. Something that's kind of like on my things to do list is to be able to learn how to code and really understand how different code bases function and they work. Because if you can speak the language to your engineers, they'll really respect you and they'll be more willing to collaborate with you and have your back. And I think that that's like really important when you're building a product. So I know personally from a technical side, I am still a work in progress and I want to be more technical. But if I had to look back, that's one of the first things that I would do. Start putting myself in courses, because at your big tech companies like your Googles and your Apples and your Amazons, they really want that technical expertise. One thing I would definitely change is my approach to time management and prioritization. I would get so overwhelmed by the sheer responsibilities of being a product manager that it became like chaos. Like I was in an organized, chaotic environment in my mind, if you will. And I still kind of operate in that organized chaos, but it's a lot more structured. And even to like start my day, I do an 𝐒𝐴𝐼𝐸 prioritization matrix. You have the things that you absolutely need to do and that are important, and that things that are important but not as urgent, things that you're like, I don't even need to do this. I can just delegate it. Or you can just go say, hey, look, I don't need to do this at all. And that has really helped me, looking up those different frameworks, not just for features, but for myself. And I think as a PM, what I've really started to notice is that you can be the best at prioritizing features, but if you can't prioritize yourself and effective time management, the product is going to suffer, and chances are you may suffer in your role or you may not. It depends. But I know for me, I was. So effective time management and being able to prioritize was absolutely super important for me, and actually went into my personal life as well. And it actually helped me manage stress better, which was, ironic for me, because I'm like, wow, like I am just gradually managing my stress, dealing with all these different things. And that's something that I had been really trying to do. I hope you found these insights helpful, and I hope they can inspire you and give you a little bit more clarity if you're, struggling in the role, or you want to be a product manager, whatever the case is. And please subscribe if you haven't already, and like, and put any comments of anything you would like me to cover in the future. And thank you for watching. And as always, I'll see you soon.